Welcome to my channel, The Good Book Tales. In today's video, we journey deep into the heart of ancient history, a time when the whole world spoke just one language and humanity stood united under one purpose. But what started as a sign of strength quickly turned into something far more dangerous. This is the story of the Tower of Babel, a story not just about bricks and mortar, but about pride, ambition, and a turning point that changed the course of human history forever. Imagine a world where there were no misunderstandings, no language barriers, no confusion. People could share ideas freely, build together, dream together. This was the world after the Great Flood, a time when Noah's descendants began to spread across the earth. But as generations passed, they found a wide plain in the land of Shinar, and instead of spreading out, they settled. One decision, seemingly innocent, would soon set the stage for one of the most mysterious and symbolic moments recorded in the Bible. In this land of Shinar, there was unity like never before. Men and women, families and clans, they all spoke the same tongue, thought the same way, and believed in a single powerful idea. Let us build a city with a tower that reaches the heavens. It wasn't just any city, and it definitely wasn't just any tower. It was their legacy, their mark. A monument to human power where no one could challenge them and no one could scatter them again. This tower wasn't about shelter. It was about status, control, and reaching the skies on their own terms. Led by powerful builders and thinkers of the time, including men like Nimrod, a mighty warrior and king, the people of Babel began their mission. They baked bricks, burned them hard, and used tar for mortar. Every brick laid was a symbol of their determination. Every stone stacked was a declaration. We don't need help from above. We will rise on our own. But what happens when human ambition tries to reach too far? When people forget who gave them the gift of language, thought, and creation in the first place? The Bible tells us that God came down to see the city and the tower, not because he didn't know what they were doing, but because something deeper was unfolding. A moment that would shift the entire course of civilization. And then it happened. An unexpected twist that no builder could have seen coming. Not through storm or fire, not by earthquake or war, but something far more subtle, yet far more powerful. Something that would leave the great tower unfinished, the people scattered, and the world divided, not by land or ocean, but by the very thing they once shared, language. Why did God intervene? Was the tower really a threat? Or was it the hearts behind the bricks that carried a deeper danger? And what can we, living in a world of over 7,000 languages today, learn from this ancient city's rise and fall? Stay with me, because what comes next will challenge what you think you know about unity, pride, and the power of words. The tower still stands in the echoes of time, not in stone, but in the lessons it left behind. The story is only just beginning. As the sun rose over the land of Shinar, the city buzzed with movement. Everywhere you looked, men were shaping bricks, women carried clay, children watched with wide eyes as the tower stretched higher and higher. From a distance, it looked like a stairway to the skies, a bold declaration that mankind had come into its own. The people believed they were building more than just a structure. They were building a future where no flood could destroy them, no God could humble them, and no force could scatter them again. The leader at the heart of it all was Nimrod, a man of vision and power, known for his unmatched bravery and influence. He had united tribes, founded kingdoms, and now had a dream bigger than any ruler before him. His voice carried weight, and when he said, "Let us make a name for ourselves," people listened. He wasn't just building a tower, he was building his legacy, a symbol of human greatness, a symbol of never being forgotten. But as the tower rose, so did whispers of unease. Some elders, old enough to remember stories of the flood, questioned the speed and ambition behind the project. "Have we forgotten what pride brings?" one asked quietly. But their voices were drowned in the sound of tools hitting stone and the cheers of laborers who believed they were invincible. The more they built, the more they believed they could not be stopped. The city itself was becoming more than just a construction site. It was a gathering of knowledge, art, and strength. But underneath all the energy, a quiet tension began to grow. People were working harder than ever, but something felt off. Workers began misunderstanding simple instructions. Bricklayers got confused. Some misheard measurements. Small mistakes turned into arguments, and arguments turned into silence. It was as if a strange fog had started settling in the minds of the people, twisting words, confusing thoughts. Nimrod, unaware of the cracks forming beneath his vision, continued to rally the people. He promised that the heavens were within reach, that their name would echo for generations, that no god could undo what they had built. But even he couldn't explain why trusted workers had begun disagreeing, why familiar words suddenly sounded foreign, why old friends now looked at each other with confusion in their eyes. Something was happening, something no one could quite explain. And as the tower touched the clouds, the hearts of the people were no longer as united as they once were. But the greatest twist was still waiting, just beyond the next stone. Among the workers, one man named Eliab began to notice the changes more clearly than others. He had worked on the tower from the very beginning and took pride in leading a small group of builders. But now, his team had become strangers overnight. One morning, he gave instructions as usual, but his words were met with blank stares. He repeated himself, slower this time, but the response was the same. Confusion. One worker answered in a strange string of words Eliab had never heard before. It wasn't just a mistake. It was like they were speaking a different language altogether. At first, Eliab thought it was just exhaustion. Maybe they'd worked too hard under the sun. But then it spread. More teams started arguing over simple orders. Miscommunication turned into frustration. Fights broke out. People accused each other of mocking them, speaking nonsense, playing games, but no one was laughing. The unity that had built the great Tower of Babel was now slowly tearing apart at the seams. Meanwhile, Nimrod held secret meetings with his advisors, determined to keep the project alive. He refused to believe what was happening. "They are tired," he insisted. "We must push forward." But even his closest men had begun to struggle to understand each other. The very thing that made the city strong, their common language, was unraveling, and no one knew why. Some whispered that it was divine judgment. Others believed it was a curse brought on by pride. But in the heart of the city, people were becoming strangers to each other, families breaking apart, partnerships falling into silence. The bricks still stood, but the bond that held the people together was slipping away. And the tower? It stood taller than ever, but more fragile than anyone could see. The streets of Babel, once filled with song and laughter, had turned eerily quiet. Workers stood in silence, staring at each other with puzzled faces, lips moving but failing to connect. Teams that had once worked like a single body now moved in scattered directions, each speaking a tongue no one else understood. Hammers fell from hands, bricks lay untouched. The rhythm of construction had stopped. The heartbeat of the city was slowing. Eliab wandered through the site, heart pounding. He tried speaking to friends he'd known since childhood, but their responses were now like distant echoes, strange and unfamiliar. Fear began creeping into the city like smoke. People started gathering in small groups, not to build, but to find someone they could understand. Husbands couldn't speak to wives. Children cried out for parents who suddenly sounded like foreigners. Babel was no longer one city. It was becoming many, split by invisible walls of confusion. Nimrod climbed to a high platform, looking down at the mess below. His dream, once so clear, now lay tangled in a nightmare of noise and silence. He shouted for order, but only a few understood. He tried to calm the people, but even his power couldn't cross the divide of language. Rage filled him, but fear lingered behind his eyes. How could everything collapse without a single stone falling? At the base of the great tower, the unfinished top disappeared into low clouds. The people stared up, still hoping, still waiting, but something hung heavy in the air. Not just silence, but judgment, a force unseen yet deeply felt. The city had reached too high, and now the very thing that made them one was being pulled apart. And then a strange wind began to blow across the plain, carrying with it a change no one could stop. As the strange wind swept through Babel, it carried more than just dust and whispers. It carried a deep unease that settled in everyone's bones. The city trembled not from any quake, but from something far more unsettling: division. Just when it seemed the confusion couldn't grow worse, a second twist unfolded that no one had prepared for. It wasn't just the speech that was changing. Now the very hearts of the people were shifting. The groups that had naturally formed by shared language began seeing each other, not as neighbors but as threats. What started as frustration grew into fear, and fear turned quickly into blame. "They are cursed," some whispered, pointing to the ones they couldn't understand. "They brought this on us," others muttered. Eyes that once looked with trust now darted with suspicion. Even those who shared a common tongue found it hard to agree on what had happened, or what to do next. Rumors spread like wildfire. Eliab, now isolated even from those he once worked with, noticed a strange pattern. People were not only gathering with others who spoke the same, they were migrating. Small camps started forming around the edges of the city. Families packed up, walking away from the tower they once built together. And still, the tower stood, looming over them like a shadow of pride they couldn't erase. In a last desperate attempt, Nimrod called for the city to unite again. He lit a massive fire at the center of the plaza, calling for anyone who could hear him. But only fragments of his words reached those around him. His voice, once mighty, was now lost in a sea of confusion. As the fire cracked and sparked, something darker stirred in the sky above. The clouds that had been still now began to spiral, and lightning flashed, lighting the unfinished tower in a ghostly glow. It was then that Eliab heard it, not with his ears but in his spirit, a sense of something greater watching. Not with anger, but with sorrow. The conflict was no longer just between people. It was between pride and purpose, between human ambition and divine design. And whatever was coming next, it would not be silent. The wind grew colder, the skies darker, and the city that had once spoken with one voice was now on the edge of something irreversible. As the storm clouds gathered thick above the tower, the wind turned violent. Dust swirled through the streets, carrying with it pieces of the city's shattered unity. The people, once builders of a common dream, now stared at the sky in silence, each group separated by language, fear, and doubt. In the heart of the chaos, Nimrod stood before the fire, his face lit by the dancing flames, eyes scanning the crowd for someone, anyone who still understood him. And then it happened. A deafening crack split the sky as a bolt of lightning struck the top of the great tower. The earth shook beneath their feet, bricks tumbled, scaffolding collapsed, and the once proud monument groaned like it was alive and in pain. People screamed, scattered in every direction, each tribe running toward the plains, clutching their loved ones, no longer able to ask where they were going, only knowing they had to leave. Eliab fell to his knees, staring at the tower as it fractured from the top down, chunks of stone breaking away, falling to the ground with terrifying force. Yet the tower didn't fully collapse. It stood there, half-built and broken, an eternal reminder of what could have been. A city meant to touch the heavens, now silenced by the very God they tried to surpass. The winds calmed, the skies cleared, but the people were no longer one. They were scattered. Across lands and valleys, they would go on to form nations, cultures, and civilizations, each with their own tongue, story, and path. But as the people faded into the distance, Eliab stayed back, frozen, and that's when he noticed something strange. From the cracked center of the tower, a faint light flickered. Buried deep in the ruins, a chamber had been revealed, a room no one remembered building. Inside, markings covered the walls, symbols not of any known language, glowing softly, as if whispering something ancient. Eliab stepped closer, heart racing. Could it be that the tower still held a secret? Something not of man, but of something older, forgotten? The story of Babel wasn't over. Something had survived, and what lay hidden beneath the ruins might change everything again. Eliab stood quietly in front of the glowing chamber, unsure whether to step inside or walk away. The light shimmered like it was alive, moving across the walls, forming shapes that felt both familiar and completely foreign. He didn't understand the markings, but deep down, he sensed they were a message, not just for him, but for anyone who might come searching for answers in the years to come. Maybe the tower had never been about reaching the skies, but about discovering something within, something ancient, divine, and full of meaning. he slowly backed away from the chamber, knowing some things weren't meant to be unlocked all at once. As he looked out over the city of Babel, now quiet and still, he felt the weight of what had happened. The people were gone, scattered across the earth, each carrying a new language and a different version of the same story. The great Tower of Babel, once the symbol of unity and pride, was now a memory, half standing, worn by wind and time. Nimrod had vanished with the rest. Some say he led a tribe far to the east, never speaking of the tower again. Others claimed he tried to build again, but without the people, his power faded. As for Eliab, he chose to stay for a while longer, burying tools and covering the chamber, not out of fear but respect. He knew that one day someone else might find it, and maybe they would understand more than he did. The Tower of Babel was more than just a story of bricks and language. It was a lesson about the dangers of pride, the power of unity, and the wisdom of knowing our limits. In trying to become gods, the people forgot the beauty of being human, of working together, speaking from the heart, and walking humbly under the sky. Even now, the ruins of Babel whisper their story to the wind, a reminder that no matter how high we try to climb, it's the foundation we build together that truly matters. And sometimes the most powerful voice is the one that listens. Thank you for watching this story on the Tower of Babel. If you found meaning in it, share it with someone who loves ancient stories, Bible history, or tales of faith, language, and lessons from the past. The journey may be over, but the story lives on.